Hello everyone, Jessica Henry Gray here, and I'm happy to have you with me today on my YouTube channel. Today I am in my studio, but we are not going to stay here. So we're going to go back to France this week. I did this little demo of this beautiful bridge and a water lily pond, and I hope you enjoy this video and get a lot out of it. I packed in a bunch of information, so I hope you check out the links below, and I will see you on the other side of this intro. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My channel primarily focuses on plein air painting. I focus on painting in a manner that teaches you the basics of plein air painting with efficiency, composition, and basically getting out and having a good time. Enjoy my videos and let's get out there and paint something beautiful. There is nothing like the New England fall colors. People travel from all over the world to capture the gorgeous fall colors of New England. I would love to see you there. It's going to be a crash course on capturing gorgeous oranges and reds and golds and all of those fun things we love about fall. So I will see you then. If you would like some more information, shoot me an email and I'll be glad to get some out to you. Hello everyone and welcome to France. This is a painting I did as a demo while I was in France. We went to this beautiful water lily garden and I did this demo. So I'm going to show you today in this video how I captured this painting. Now in this video you can see I've got a little bridge in the background and it reminded me so much of Monet's garden at Giverny. And they don't let you plein air paint in Giverny. So I was so excited when I was teaching my workshop in France and we went to this gorgeous lily garden and there were just hundreds of different kinds of water lilies and lotus flowers at this place. And so there was this adorable bridge. And so I thought, I'm going to just sort of channel my inner Giverny Monet and capture the color. So you'll see I do change the color a little bit on the bridge. So now to jump into this painting, I want you to notice that I have this piece of linen taped to this aluminum panel. It's an aluminum panel that I did 3 coats of oil primer on the other side of it. So when I'm traveling, I'll flip a large panel over like that. And I'll tape down pieces of linen as I need them for my paintings. And then I go back to my room and take the tape off and let them just air dry so I can pack along 20 paintings and they don't take up really any space in my suitcase, just a file folder of paintings. So now this one is, I believe it was 8 by 10, it might be 9 by 12, linen, and I toned it with I went towards a little bit of a greener tint in this painting. And I choose the color of the base, how I tone the canvas, based on what I'm seeing out in my view as a predominant middle tone value. What do I see that value and color as? In this case, I see a lot of just a sage green. So I use some yellow ochre and ultramarine blue to tone the canvas. A tiny bit of burnt sienna just to keep it from being quite so brilliant green, which gave it a bit of an olive tone. So I brushed that on, wiped it off, and at this point now I am blocking in my composition. And you'll see I wiped out the bridge that I had put in the beginning because I wanted it a little more articulate. It was sort of just a suggestion of maybe I'll put it here. And that's one of the reasons I don't draw on the canvas with a pencil. It is so easy to move around this paint when it's really thin. So I keep a paper towel in my other hand, and my paint is pretty loose. That I've got my odorless mineral spirits on the side, and it's a barely tiny bit of the mineral spirits in my paint, just to help me draw in my composition. So you can see I'm mentally blocking in where my darkest areas are going to be on this painting. So I've got the bridge located, and then I've mapped out where my darkest passages are going to be. And that helps me to be able to define the main values of my design. But it is pretty much a middle tone painting with the exception of some of the darks. So I'm putting in a few more darker values I call anchors on the other side of the bridge. And these are important, especially where you have your focal area in the painting. For me, the focal area is this bridge off in the distance, obviously. And so I'm going to have a darker area directly underneath it, as you can see. But I want to make sure that I capitalize on that dark passage because our eye is always drawn to the area of the greatest contrast. And bridges are a human interest anyway, so we're definitely going to be drawn to that bridge. So I wanted to give the viewer something to see. Now this is a guy, he's going through with this boat, and they're cleaning up the lily pads. So if you'll notice that they keep the lily pads growing in these little clumps like that so that they don't take over the whole pond. And that is actually how Giverny is as well. It's not all spread out like I thought it would be. When I went to Giverny, I thought it, would have its scattered lilies, but they're not. They're more in piles like that. Now, as I'm working out some of the foliage around the pond, I'm thinking about where I want the masses of the bushes and how I want them all to be laid in. And I can change and rearrange the bushes and trees in my scene to best work out the composition. I like how everything is, so I don't feel that I need to really change things too much, but I did drop down the horizon in the background just a bit more so that we could have a peek of the sky. Having some sky in the painting like this, I feel like it opens it up and gives us an opportunity to feel like we have an escape, a visual escape. So I'm taking some of the darker green, and I used some cadmium yellow into that ultramarine blue to create some of the dark green shadows of the tree. I'm still working out the darker values of the painting and where they're going to be situated. Still not using very thick paint. The fat over lean principle applies to plein air as well. So even though it's alla prima, I still try to adhere to the basic rule of your foundational layer and blocking in needs to be very thin. And then you can build up over that. Which is nice in a way too, because if you're going to maybe wipe things off or rearrange or adjust your composition, it's easier to wipe off a thin layer of paint than a lot of paint. So keep it suggested in the beginning. And I'm catching some of the sunlight as I saw it on this tree, because it will change quite a bit. And you'll see throughout the course of this video how much the light will change. So what you do is you try to be as efficient as possible so it streamlines your entire process outdoors, and also capture the sun and color as you see it when you really like it. And of course, take a picture at that moment as well. Now this bush in front of the bridge has some white, sort of opaque quality to the leaves on top. So I was catching that as the sun was hitting it at that moment. In the beginning stages of a painting, it is the most challenging part of the entire painting process. If you don't get the beginning to a place to where you're happy with it, you're going to be struggling and sort of treading water the rest of the time that you're painting. So if you're not happy at this stage with your plein air painting, stop, wipe it, back up, reassess where you're going with it, because you're just going to be what they say is putting frosting on a cardboard cake. Make sure that your foundation is solid. And when I say be happy with it, a lot of times when I say that in workshops or classes, people say, well, I don't know if I should be happy with it. How do I know to be happy with it? I think that the best way to describe it is we have sort of an innate sense of composition and design that we're born with. You'll notice children have sort of a sense of balance in their drawings, little kid drawings. And then children, as they're developing throughout the course of their childhood, learning to draw, they start to shift from understanding composition just subconsciously to how to draw things. So they start concentrating on how to draw a truck or a person or whatever, horses. And so they kind of we lose that natural ability to understand composition. But it's there. So tap into what feels right. Now, there are many books written on composition, and I do like to talk about it in depth in my workshops and classes and on my Epiphany page. But if you just, as a rule of thumb, when you're out plein air painting, stand back. Does it feel balanced? Is there an attractive layout? Do you have things rushing off the edge of the canvas? Ask yourself where your eye will travel through the painting. Does your focal area make sense? Is it obvious what is most important to you? So those are important questions to ask yourself when you are assessing how you're doing with your painting. So at this point in the process here, I'm still blocking in some of the main design elements that are going to be crucial to drawing the eye back to the bridge. So I'm looking at the color placement of some of these bushes and how they will be leading in sort of from the right over there to the left, and how the dark background is going to frame some of those in. Now, you can't really see, but directly behind my easel is this gorgeous willow tree, and so I will be getting that in off to the right. When you're painting something as complicated as water and you see all those beautiful reflections from the trees down into the water, you have to squint your eyes and just capture the color blocks as you see them. Pieces of color. I squint down at that and I see a darker passage of the shadows in the water, and I try to paint those anywhere I see that in the water. Now this darker green that I'm getting off to the side, that is from the willow tree that is directly above it. So I'm trying to still map out the visual path that the viewer would take throughout the painting. These are the placements of the lily pad clusters, and where I want those exactly in the painting, not necessarily where they are in nature, but where they are going to best suit my compositional needs. Sometimes you can look out and for whatever reason things just line up too perfectly, and if you painted it that way, it wouldn't look natural. So you have to make those adjustments. Now off to that side, the bushes and all that foliage are a little bit cooler, and so I'm painting them a bit more sage green, and some of that distant hills and the trees, that's definitely cooler as it goes back. A grayer green. And then you can even see just already from this stage of the painting, the lily pads and everything up close is going to be a warm, rich, darker green, but further back they're lighter and more atmospheric, giving you the illusion of distance. I apologize for not getting very much of my palette in this painting video. I was traveling, and this was while I was teaching my workshop in France, and so I didn't have all of my gear. I just had a simple camera phone and one camera phone, so I couldn't get all of everything in one shot, but you can see bits of it, and I hope that it is helpful. So I'm putting in some of the sky here, and now the temptation is to put, oh, look at those beautiful clouds, and to try to squeeze those in somehow. But while that temptation is really, that's gorgeous, it's not going to help my overall picture because my focus is the bridge. And if I start putting beautiful color and interesting shapes and all this also going on in the scene, it's going to distract. And this is a limited amount of time for a plein air painting. I could always take this scene and go back to the studio and paint it, but I guarantee you if I painted that exactly as you see it here off to the left, the bridge would not become the primary focus because you've got the entire scene. So be careful about the temptation of adding everything pretty in front of you. You have to exercise some restraint when it comes to everything that you include into your painting, especially your plein air, because time and efficiency have to be number one considerations for your outdoor experience. That passage where the trees meet the sky, I made them a little bit more purple than they were in real life, and I also softened the edge because I don't want to draw the eye further back. I want that to still have the feeling of distance. And a sharp edge will sort of, it eliminates that understanding of distance. So I'm taking some of that purple color that I see in the background, and I'm putting some of that in the water where I see different reflections coming through. Now here I am blocking in the shadows that I see when squinting down at a willow tree. And I feel bad that you can't see it, but we'll see if we can get another shot of it. So when I squint at it, I see it's sort of an olive, dusty, dark olive green, and that's ultramarine blue, yellow ochre, and I add a bit more of the white to it and some more yellow to paint the outer passages of the willow tree. And then by painting it this way, you sort of sculpt out the form of like this chandelier effect. Keeping it very simple with a few values, dark, medium, and light, is the fastest and most solid way to develop form on anything you're painting, light, medium, and dark. You can always add more details later, but if you don't have the placement and the structure of the light, medium, and dark values in place, it's not going to hold together. So don't worry about getting the details in. That can always come later. A little bit of the cadmium yellow, I believe that's light, might be a Hansa yellow light, and some white. Just as the light hits the top of the tree, I wanted a bit more of the strength of that light on it. Now to put it in the water, I just darken it a little bit. Now here I'm just taking, it's a bit of my darker passage, and I'm isolating some more of the color that I see in the water that's a bit darker, going around the lily pad clusters. And I placed in the water some of the sky that I saw reflected in it, and I'm using that as reference, kind of painting around them. They were there to help with the flow and the design, the compositional design. Now here you can see I've just been blocking in the color that is in the water. It's pretty much different shades of dark green, which is the ultramarine blue, little burnt sienna, a little bit of yellow ochre, and just a touch of the cadmium yellow. So just in smaller portions of those colors, varying degrees, is all that I've done for the water. And again, I'm squinting down at the surface to block in the major passages of the different shades. When I'm painting water, I do try to keep my brush strokes horizontal to create the illusion of water and the surface on the water. So I'm just cleaning up some of the sky in the water. From where I'm standing, the shape of the sky is a little bit different in the water from my perspective versus this camera perspective. So it's going to look a little different there. But I just wanted the light, the value, to be a bit more articulate than what I have indicated. And I liked the feeling of the movement of light as it stretched across that passage of sky in the water. Closer to me, it was grayer, and then further away, it was sunnier white. And you can see the clouds above, they were darker gray, and that's what was being reflected in the grayness of that shine on the water. And as those clouds drifted off, they got lighter. And so that's what I was trying to put in that passage. So here I'm building up some of the form on the trees now a bit more with some cadmium yellow, some white, and some of the blue, just to develop the form that these trees are closer than what's happening in the background. I wanted to break that horizon line just a little to indicate that this tree goes above and beyond it, which is what you can see in the back there. Now I'm taking a gray mixture here, and I'm just mapping out sort of where the trunk of that tree is against that dark passage there. And I don't want to call a lot of attention to it, so I'm keeping it kind of subdued. It's just a subtle gray, more or less just providing support. Now to do the bridge, I am mixing up a color. You can see it off to the side there. It's a bit more blue here. This color is a bit more phthalo green added to the ultramarine blue and a little yellow ochre and a little cadmium yellow with some white. So there's a touch of phthalo green in it. Now I'm going to block in the basic shape of the bridge, and then I can take a tiny brush and come through and put a few dots suggesting the little triangles in between the bars. So I'm putting a highlight on the footpath part of the bridge because I felt that it needs to have an indication of where the light is hitting the bridge. And so I was looking forward to adding that. It's kind of, you can see it in the background, but I pushed it just a little more to give it some more contrast and accent. And now for the reflection in the water, it's just the same color but a little darker, so there's more ultramarine blue and yellow ochre into this mixture. So I'm putting in the railings on the bridge. Now I'm being very careful to keep everything that happens in the water softer and not as sharply defined as what's above. You can see off to the left the reflection of the bridge in the water. It's not as sharp and articulate as the actual bridge. So just be aware of that, but things reflected in the water are going to be softer, especially as the wind moves and agitates the surface. now I'm going through and I'm giving a bit more of an articulate voice to the passages of the lily pad clusters. So in the process of painting the water, they can get a little bit muted and fuzzy and lost. So I'm coming back through now and I'm giving more clarity to the surface of the water. This passage here where the willow tree is reflected in the water, I wanted to give some of that a little bit more attention. Here I'm going through and I'm giving the background tree, the one that is right dead center, right next to the bridge, some more attention. I felt that this needs to have more clarity as it is right by the star of the show. So, and right now there's a cloud that has that has gone over the sun, and so the whole painting is cast in a bit more of a shady quality, but that happens when you're plein air painting and when you're filming. So it's just part of it. Here I'm just taking the corner of my brush and I'm taking some white and I'm dragging in some reflections of the sky in the water to give it some definition of what's happening above. Now it's one thing to look out at the water and put the reflections in, but make sure that what you do put in the water is actually reflected above. Sometimes we can get caught up in what we see here and not realize that it has to connect with what's happening above the water. So I'm just taking the chiseled edge of my brush and putting in some of these ripples on the water. And I'm cleaning up some of the ripples on the water over here as I saw them. I thought that something had changed, and I liked the way that they were curving this way. It, in a way, helped point the viewer back toward the bridge, which I thought was an effective use of those ripples. Now I'm taking again just the small edge of that brush and I'm coming through and putting in some actual water lily pads and some of that soft, chalky gray-green to indicate where those are. And even though I look out there and I see perfect oblique ovals for the lily pad clusters, I broke up the edges a little to add some textural variety to the lily pads. So here I've just laid in some darker ripples in the water and a little bit more attention to the water lily pads as they're going further back. So I like the little bits of lily pads up close, and I want those to have some greater attention and a little bit more detail. So that's why I'm giving these just a bit more care. So I'm mixing up a little bit of alizarin permanent with some white, and just makes a really soft pink. Putting in a few of the lilies flowers. I'm not going to take the time to give them each petals and so forth because they're too far away. So I just wanted to gently suggest some subtle flowers. Now I am using, that is a little bit of a magenta off to the side. I have some special colors I brought with to France just for flowers and things. So that is a bit of magenta with the white. I'm also carefully considering where to put the flowers. I don't want to just willy-nilly start dabbing them in place. They have to work for me. Every part, every brushstroke of your painting has to be for a purpose. So ask yourself, every time you start to do something, is what I'm about to do going to help or hurt my composition, my design, my overall painting? If what I'm about to do is going to contribute to what it was I really loved about the painting, then go ahead and do it. If not, then take a step back and consider. So with each one of these lily flowers, I'm thinking, is this where this flower needs to be? So I'm adding a few small little flowers way back there to give the idea that these water lilies and the water lily pond go way back. I've added some yellow water lily flowers. I'm adding some detail information around the bridge because that is the area of focus. So I've added some purple flowers to the bushes and some pink, some grassy reeds in the water. Just what I am always trying to think of is rewarding the viewer for coming up and looking at my painting, getting in there, enjoying the focal point. And so that is my effort here as I wrap up this painting, just to consider what is the most important feature to this scene. Did I really capture what it was that I liked so much about it? And of course it was this bridge. And since I wasn't able to paint at Giverny, I felt like I still got something of a French experience painting this water lily pond and bridge. As I conclude this plein air study, what I like to do is step back and just assess, is there anywhere where I need a bit more pop? So I thought that the darkness of the foliage and trees behind these passages needed to be punched a little bit more intense. And just some minor things like that. So as I wrap this up, I wanted to thank you all for joining me so much on my video here. And if you're interested in the France workshop, I've got a couple spots left. And I'm always happy to give you information on that if you send me an email. We'll be adding some more educational opportunities to my website for next year, 2024. So join my email newsletter if you want to stay up to date with new things that I'm going to be adding. I think you'll be interested in some of these exciting things coming up. So again, thank you so much for joining me. And if you enjoyed this video, why don't you give it a like and subscribe if you enjoyed it. All right, everyone. Well, that wraps this video up. I hope you enjoyed the water lily pond and bridge. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and check out the links below. If you're interested in my upcoming workshops, I have links for those as well down below. I'd love to see you in Massachusetts. I've got my workshop coming up there this fall, October 13th to the 15th, painting the beautiful fall colors just over a weekend, and there's more information for that down below. All right, you guys, I will see you next time. Bye-bye.